The World Economic Forum Congress Center is packed to the brim. I've been coming here for several years now. Very rarely are the halls quite as chock-a-block as they are, and as high profile. I just bumped into Commerce Secretary of the United States, Howard Lutnick, while I was walking up to the NDTV studios here in Davos. Former Ambassador Richard Verma, top businessman, economist, they're all there. And the only thing they're talking about is what will Trump say. And the interesting thing there is no one's quite sure. So if you listen to those who cover the White House, the top journalists, the editors in the American newspapers whose job it is to cover the American president's office, like it is for many of my colleagues to cover the Prime Minister's office, they're saying that Trump will try and come across as an international player. He doesn't want to come across as somebody who's off the rails. He'll probably try and dial down and appear reasonable and talking to a global audience, talking about the globalization project and saying that it's not over. That's those who cover the White House. However, there's a lot of trepidation and concern amongst those from Europe. I was speaking earlier to the Secretary General of the NATO, the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb. Many of them are hugely concerned, with very good reason, with everything that they've heard President Trump say over the past few days, particularly on Greenland. When he was asked that question about Greenland, he says, how far will you go? He says, wait and see. What we're seeing very clearly is Europe trying to suggest that they will push back. They obviously realize that without American support, the ability to push back is very weak. In fact, that was the conversation in one of the WEF sessions this morning. Can Europe defend itself? And the unfortunate reality is, while defense spending has gone up from, say, 1.5% to 2% just in the last year, they've promised to take it up to 5%. The fact is that at this position, at this time, Europe is in no position to defend himself. Zelensky is here tomorrow. We're going to be in a session with him, and the critical concern is, with Russia already occupying about 20% of the landmass of Ukraine without support from the US, and with whatever little support Europe can continue to muster, can Ukraine defend itself? Those are the critical questions. It's never been as complicated to cover the World Economic Forum or even to cover geopolitics, because geopolitics in some sense is being replaced by ego politics. So much happening so quickly. It's almost as if you're watching a surreal television opera rather than decisions which influence the fate of nations. And the man who's literally at the center of that storm, creating that storm himself, Donald Trump, he'll be here at the World Economic Forum very soon, and we'll be bringing you live coverage all across the NDTV network.
Absolutely. We are, like you mentioned, expecting perhaps Davos or showdown between the European leaders and Trump. But Rahul, we're also learning that there are a slew of protests in Davos ahead of Trump's visit. You are joining us live from Davos. Tell us more on that, and what kind of a message are they trying to send across to the US president?
Oh, as I was walking into the Congress Center, in different places along the promenade, there were people protesting, down with Trump, go bad, all kinds of protest messages. And that is part of the surround sound. The critical thing is, in the bilateral meetings that he has, in the meetings he has with the heads of state, remember, 6 of the G7 countries are here. There's a massive business delegation that Trump is meeting. Many, in fact, had to change their flights to be able to be part of this meeting that Trump is doing with 100 plus global business leaders. So the conversation there is, how do you deal with this man? Nobody wants to get on his wrong side. We saw Mike Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, push back very strong. In fact, he got a very rare standing ovation inside the Congress Center yesterday when he was speaking, and a lot of people appreciated, especially off record, his very stern message. But they don't want to be on Trump's wrong side. So they're saying, they're trying to deliver in as firm, in as polite a way their sentiment. They're trying to communicate that, but they don't frankly want to get on his wrong side. These protesters, of course, trying to convey their message. Trump clearly immune to protest, immune to what anyone thinks. He even went out to say, I didn't get the Nobel, which is why I now want Greenland. There's no point in pursuing the path of peace. It doesn't get me anywhere. And he's indicated that he's willing to go any distance. Now, how much of that is rhetoric? How much of that is filibuster? How much of that is reality? We don't know. We saw what he did in Venezuela.
Well, we're just learning that the US president has landed in Zurich.
Nobody in Davos quite certain of what he'll do.
Right, we just want to inform our viewers that the US President Donald Trump has landed in Zurich as we speak. And like you also mentioned about the slew of issues, Zelensky being there at Davos, do you think that the US-EU ties will perhaps dominate, perhaps will be the key agenda when Trump reaches Davos as we speak? That is the Air Force One of the US President Donald Trump, which has perhaps taken a touchdown there in Zurich. He has reached Switzerland ahead of his arrival at the World Economic Forum. Yes, Rahul.
Think for a moment about the psyche of Donald Trump. As he was growing up the corporate ladder, here's a New York land estate player who was shunned by the big money, the Larry Finks, the Blackstones, the BlackRocks. They didn't really, in his worldview, and that's been well documented, didn't really give him much play. Now he dominates the conversation. Everyone's trying to come and kiss the ring. It makes him feel special, and there's been so much talk about how, there's a high element of megalomania which is at play. Many commentators that we've been speaking to, top global pundits, have essentially, and even those who study human psychology, raising serious questions about the psychiatric condition of the American president at this time. Now, you think that this wouldn't be something which would be spoken of so publicly, but given everything that's happened, those are concerns that are being looked at. Apparently, there was some snarl in the first plane in which Trump took off, so they had to circle back to DC. He's a couple of hours delayed. He was supposed to be speaking in about 2 hours from now, but if he's just reached Zurich, so there may be some change in the schedule. But NDTV has a massive contingent on the ground here in Davos, the first network which came to Davos more than 2 decades ago, covering this very extensively. And as President Trump makes his way from Zurich to Davos, we'll be tracking every twist and turn, every moment in this very high stakes appearance by a man who's really taken a sword into the globalization project, now coming at the centerpiece of the globalization project, which is what Davos and the World Economic Forum represents. What he says, no one frankly quite knows, which is also what makes the next couple of hours so important and so exciting from a news perspective.
Absolutely, because all eyes will be on the US president. He has perhaps reached Zurich at a time when he has been adamant on acquiring Greenland, the takeover of the Venezuelan president, and of course the tariff threats that he has been announcing to the world. In your analysis, do you think that with Zelensky being there, Ukraine-Russia war, will that issue take a backseat, and will it be a Greenland issue which will be at the top focus?
In the conversations that I've had with the European leaders, also listening to some of the sessions that they've been part of, it's very clear that they would like that Ukraine's security be a critical part of the conversations here at Davos, because Ukrainian security is seen as being very clearly linked to European security, and therefore they'd like this to be the conversation. But Trump's actually flipped that. In the bid that he's making for Greenland, he's upped the stakes. And remember, the whole transatlantic project is now facing greater question marks than it has ever in the last several decades, because this is not Greece versus Turkey. This is the United States, the country which was supposed to be the provider of security, now turning into the biggest threat. It's not China, it's not Russia that's been seen as the biggest threat. It is the United States. Alexander Stubb and many like him, including Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, they were trying to dial down tensions, hoping that this is just a passing phase, hoping that they'll be able to deal with Trump. But remember, as you saw earlier this week, here's a man who can literally do anything. He took some of the private messages that the French President Emmanuel Macron had sent to him, like these are private messages that are being sent on his mobile phone, and he made them public. So if this is someone who can do this to a country that is a very close friend and ally going back centuries, then frankly you don't know. You just have to wonder which side of the bed this guy wake up on, and what is he going to come and say.
Right, absolutely. Rahul, you've been speaking to the top ministers and thought leaders. What is the sense that you're getting on how the world is viewing how India has dealt with Trump so far?
I spoke to a few former ambassadors who've looked at the India-US relationship going back several decades. They're obviously crestfallen and downbeat about how Trump has really muddied the relationship. Remember, things like defense purchases, because America was hoping that we'd buy more advanced weaponry from the United States. I know for a fact, after speaking to senior military leaders across the tri-services, that there is no way that anybody serving at this moment in a position of authority is going to sign off on purchasing equipment from the United States, given what's happened over the past few months. So given this reality, the relationship has actually gone back several years. Somebody said 2.5 decades. The fact also is that questions are being raised about whether it makes any sense at all for India and the United States to sign off on a deal. Remember, both Indian ministers and American ministers have been indicating that we're very close to being able to sign the deal, that we're literally in a position to be able to do it any day. But others question, given what's happened between the US and EU on the trade deal, that even if he signs, tomorrow something would happen which he doesn't like, he may change his mind, and therefore you make all this effort, make all those announcements, given that he can't be predicted, is the deal even worth the paper it's been written on?
Right, Rahul. Also, in Burma, when he spoke to us and to our colleague Vishnu, he said that when Trump deals with India, he always chickens out. Those were his words, because he does not take Prime Minister Modi lightly. Do you think that the EU leaders have perhaps misread Trump, and India has played smart, because Trump also completed his 1 year as during his second tenure as the US president?
You know, I don't think anybody can claim that they've played him smart. Everybody's just trying to deal with him. He's like a bull in a china shop. He's just going berserk, smashing all the crockery and the china that's lying around, and everyone's just trying to minimize damage. The fact is, he's given the Indian government a tough time. There can be no question about it. He is in many ways, given the fact that our main threat is across the Himalayas in China, and we've had a frosty relationship with Beijing since the Galwan clashes of 2020, we're already in a tough spot. In the north, in the west with Pakistan, there are countries like the United States, which you count as strategic partners in your relationship, in your diplomacy, suddenly creating so much trouble for you. That's not a happy situation to be playing with. So I don't think anyone can claim at all that they've played him smart. They're all trying to deal with the bully who's gone berserk in the China shop and try and ensure that he does as little damage to the China as possible.
But absolutely, we'll have to see what Trump actually says there at the World Economic Forum. But thanks very much, Rahul, for joining us live from Davos. Well, there has been tension simmering between Trump and his European counterparts for weeks together now. From pot shots on Macron and NATO chief Mark Rutte to doubling down on his Greenland narrative. This report sums up what's happening and what the world can expect at Davos.
The mania that is Donald Trump, a gift that keeps on giving. The US president is out for war with Europe. Tariffs, takeovers, and a tirade. Trump declared his intentions to annex Greenland and take over the country against a sharp European pushback. He then threatened tariffs against those that opposed him and didn't give in.
And I may do that for Greenland too. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security.
Greenland has been under NATO protection since 1949, and its fellow members have shown stern support against Trump's proposed operation. Trump threatened 10% tariffs first, then 25%. The message was clear: non-compliance comes with consequences. Now the tariff tsunami has got Trump's 100% go-ahead as well, as EU and its members protect their interests. The US president continued his war cry in social media too, sharing an image of hoisting the American flag in Greenland. He one-upped himself with another post of an altered map showing Greenland and Canada as a part of American territory. EU chief reiterated support to the Arctic nation, hitting back at Donald Trump's threats, and said there could be an unflinching response from Brussels.
Full solidarity with Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. The sovereignty and integrity of their territory is non-negotiable.
A global pushback right before heading to the world's biggest platform, the World Economic Forum in Davos. Trump's ego-filled balloon hovers above Europe, while the whole world holds its breath, wondering what bombshell he'll drop next. NDTV Bureau Report.
Well, Trump's controversial Gaza Board of Peace has critics scratching their heads. The US president has sent out invitations to several countries to join a board. But which countries will accept the grand invite? Here's a special report.
I'm a big fan of the UN potential, but it has never lived up to its potential. The UN should have settled every one of the wars that I settled.
The peace president has a new objective, and it appears to rival the United Nations. US President Donald Trump recently launched what he's calling a historic new international body, the Board of Peace. Originally built as a mechanism to help end the war in Gaza, the initiative has rapidly morphed into something far more ambitious and far more controversial. Trump has invited roughly 60 countries to join this board, with the hope of positioning it as a new forum for resolving global conflict. While Morocco's King Mohammed VI accepted a spot on Monday, becoming the first Arab leader to join, UAE became one of the first to express support. Vietnam, Kazakhstan, Hungary and Argentina also have signed on. But many key powers have stayed silent or expressed hesitation, with reports suggesting key ally France won't be joining. Critics argue that Trump's Board of Peace looks less like a neutral peace engine and more like a parallel global institution, one that could undermine the very authority of the UN. And as India now considers whether to accept its invitation, experts say New Delhi should think twice before jumping in. Reports highlight several risks. The board structure places disproportionate influence in the hands of a few major players. With the UN and many world leaders watching very closely, Trump's bold new diplomatic gambit may very well reshape or further fracture the global world order. Bureau Report for NDTV World.
Well, at Davos, the energy transition is moving from ambition to action, and India is taking center stage as Schneider Electric positions India as its global growth hub. The country's rapid push into data centers, smart infrastructure, and clean energy is now unlocking a $1 trillion opportunity.